Good morning. Today is July 17th, 2018. My name is Joe Reingold, and I'm interviewing Robert Soussi. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Thank you.
Good. Tell us a little bit about your family, your grandparents and your parents, where they lived, where they were, and how they came over here.
Well, I can answer two or three of those questions all in one.
Okay.
I was born in Alexandria, Egypt in 1912. I'm getting confused
That's okay.
between answering in French and then answering in
Oh.
the English version. 12, December 26, 25.
Okay.
Born in Alexandria, Egypt, of French parents. I say French parents because my father was French also, but I think my mother was partly Italian through her part of the family. And they were married a long, long time too, as well. They had 4 children. The 2 eldest were 2 girls. I had 2 sisters, older than myself. I was the next boy, and the 4th was a younger son. 2 girls, 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
In the Jewish tradition, a lot of responsibility, the onus was on me being the oldest boy. And, well, so this is it. My grandparents, I vaguely remember my grandfather, hardly my grandmother, paternal. And she was feisty, small in size, and very secluded, very secluded. That's the way she was brought up. And she had, I think, 8 children, 4 men, 4 girls, as far as I remember. And she preferred that once they were grown up and she had taken care of them through education, etc., and lost her husband, so to retire, socially speaking. On the part of my mother, I've never met, I never remembered my maternal grandmother, because she probably passed away a long, long time. My maternal grandfather, I do remember him. He was also an extremely proud old man. And when I say proud, he didn't want any help from financial help from anybody. And when he came to, I'm jumping a little bit, but it gives you an idea.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And when he came to visit our house, he had never had a meal inside the house. We had a sukkah the whole year round.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
The whole year round. And he would have his meal right there. He would come once a week from downtown Alexandria, from the Jewish quarters.
Mm-hmm.
He would take a tram. Buses were unreliable. He would take a tram. He always had a cane, and he would walk from it. He would never tell us when he would come, so he didn't want to be met. So he would find his way to our house. And that is as far as my grandparents. I remember him vividly because he once came to the school. And I was brought up in an English school, and they looked down on him a little bit because they didn't expect that kind of thing. He wanted to bring me a pastry, you know. And one of those Middle Eastern pastries. I forgot some of the names, a kunafa, a batai, this and that and the other. but that was my grandfather. When my father, as far as I remember, well, my mother never worked when she had the 4 children, never worked. Tradition, if you wish, but her job is to take care of the house, raise the children, take care of her husband, and they were very, very, very close. And so I believe at the time they lived, I don't remember it very well, living in an apartment. But it came to the point that my father, his position, they decided to build a house, and they called them at the time, those houses that they were independent, they would call them, they would be called villas, villas. And he settled down in a place, Alexandria, in a place called Cleopatra, because initially they said that Cleopatra was there for a while with her lover, Antony, whoever it is, and it was called Cleopatra les Bains, for the beaches, the baths. So instead of baths, beaches, Cleopatra les Bains. And that was about 5 or 7 stops by tram to the city of Alexandria, where the banks are, etc. Interspersed the schools. And so my father had the villa built. But then the problem was how to get the mail to be delivered. It didn't exist. So you had to go to the post office. But gradually, a few more villas were built here and there. So the authorities, the municipality, the authority is called municipality, called him and suggested to him, now listen, to make it easier for the mailman, and all the mail comes like in English or French or Italian, Greek much less. However, we will name that street that you live in after your name. And it was called Rue, R-U-E, for street,
Right.
or whatever, Soussi. I'm proud to say it's still there, after so many years. But when Egypt became independent and the British left, they asked that Rue Soussi should be divided into 2. The top in Arabic, and the bottom remains the same, Rue Soussi. I've got pictures at home, and I've got, I believe I brought a plaque back. Okay, but that was it, and it remains Rue Soussi. And there you are. That's why, so this is where we lived. And this is where my 2 sisters, my brother, myself, traveled, or if that's the name, traveled, that's another name, to go to school. To go to school. At the time, that's what between my father and mother, they decided that my 2 sisters would go for the French education. So they would go to lycées. You're familiar with them. And my brother and myself, my name at the time, nobody called me Robert, whatever. And my younger brother, Claude, and myself, we started off with like kindergarten or 1 year of French, and then moved over to the British boys' school in Alexandria. So my 2 sisters, lycée français, and my brother and I to the British boys' school.
And you stayed there all through school, through high school? Did you stay?
Okay, the way it was done, and I will always remember this. It was called Low High. It had 12 classrooms. The bottom 6 were the low ones, starting, not kindergarten, but you would create, over there they didn't call them grades. Class 1, class 2, the classes, class up to 6. And then, if you deserved 8, and you got the necessary grades, you step up the next level floor. So we go to, again, up at 1 to 6, and that makes you ready for college. Makes you ready for college. This did not, so I'm skipping now. So it gives you an idea. Of course, I went through Boy Scouts and that kind of thing, you know, to British. Well, you had to, you know, if you want to be part of it. If I wanted to be a French Boy Scout, I had to join the French community or whatever. Anyway, so then there was a war. Did I jump too much?
Oh, it's fine.
Then the war broke out. So the plans had been, if I had done the 12 classes, is to continue in England.
Oh.
Provided you had the grades. It's not taken for granted.
Right.
Provided you had the grades and provided you, well, my parents had the financial means, you know. Idem for my 2 sisters. But the pressure was not on them that much, although they got very, very good grades. Baccalaureate.
Good.
Yeah. So anyway, so England then decided, and that was early in the war, that to send the people over from Egypt or from Iran was also under British auspices or British rules, and other places, Iraq was also the same thing. On the other side, Syria and Lebanon was under the French. But anyway, they had decided that to send all those young men, students, ours was a boys' school, no girls, to send them over to England. It would be more economical and better to send teachers from England over to Egypt. So they would, the proportion would have been like 1 for every 20 students or whatever it is. It depends on the caliber of the student and what they wanted to do. If they wanted to go into engineering, science, commerce, what they call commerce, which means business.
Right.
They didn't use the word commerce too much, business. So anyway, they came over. And so we had to go through classes again, but under teachers that we were not familiar with, and that kind of thing. So this was going on up to 48, yeah. And so I got the maximum of it. Things got even worse now, militarily and politically. A lot of resentment by the Egyptian people against British authority, that kind of thing. Germany advancing, Italy first at war, and the British and the Germans following, you know. So there was a lot of, yeah. So come in 1948, there was nationalization, and that was hurting every European, in that factories had to employ like up to 75% local labor. And that was, I'm talking about factories, and you go down to bakers and all of this. And there was a huge population of foreigners of all nationalities. And then for the others, it was officers had to employ 90% Egyptians, 10% Europeans. And it didn't work too well for the banks and so forth. So they were told, all right, fire or employ more Egyptians, even if they don't do any work. And you can keep the quota by not dismissing some of the Europeans. My father, incidentally, was a stockbroker at the Bourse. It was called the Bourse. And he was also the bank manager of a bank. So he was involved in both. The Bourse didn't work too well because no exports. 90%, the wealth of Egypt is cotton. I'm sure you must be familiar.
Yeah.
The finest cotton in the world is from Egypt. But 90% was bought in advance by the British. They bought it straight away to feed their factories in Manchester, tweeds and this and this and this. And the rest went for exports. And then my father sensed that absolutely there was no future for tradition for me to take over from my father or to even join. There was no future for us. So again, there's a lot of decisions that were made really unknown to us. We were really wonderful kids in that we respected our parents and left babies too much, but all decision making to the parents. Can I continue?
Yeah.
All right. Very quickly, it was decided that my brother and I should leave and go to France. We had the passports, we were French citizens, registered at the consulate in Alexandria, at the embassies in Cairo. So we had no problem getting. That was in 1948. So we left. We went to France. So what happened? Let me digress a little bit because I can speak for myself, but I want to speak to my brother. I was very, very military minded. I loved military parades. I loved discipline. I loved uniforms. I loved everything, everything. My brother, not so. Absolutely not at all. He was more of the student. So he also did his last years in Alexandria at the lycée. They had more of his liking to continue. When we got to France, we were given ration cards and we were going to get help to be located somewhere to live with families.
Right.
So my brother, he was told, you have to do national service. So he was directed to the national service. My brother was going to do, I forgot what he was going to do. So he was going to do lab work, that kind of thing. High. So when he went there, and they said, now be careful now, we'll accept your grades that you brought from the lycée, we'll accept your grades, but remember, you might be interrupted because you had to do national service, 12 months. So he was taken into sympathy, and they said, by the way, if you volunteer for national service, instead of being called, so there'd be no interruption, then you can come back for the school, but also you'll have the advantage of doing only 9 to 10 months instead of a whole year of national service, and you have the advantage of choosing the service, Army, Navy, Air Force. Well, my brother saw the kind of army it was, a grudge and that kind of thing. And because of his English, he was directed for air. Well, anyway, to make it very brief, within months, he was asked if he would be interested in flying. And he never wanted to be a military person. He was sent to the States under NATO, and he came to Texas, Dallas, Montgomery, and Austin, and he went to the flying schools under NATO.
Oh, okay.
Under NATO.
Mm-hmm.
NATO provided everything, everything. And his career was in the Air Force. And he also served in Indochina. And very, very highly decorated. I looked for a job, and in France, I had a recommendation to go to Air France because of my English. But you have to go through the ranks for admission. So I applied, then I got a reply to say, okay, there'll be classes, and you'll have to attend. And the classes were about 200, 250. Fill up forms. Then, if the forms were attractive enough, you were told to stay behind and face a panel of the people who decide whether you would fit with Air France or not. I attended the panel, and I was warned by a friend to say, when somebody asked me a question, somebody else, I would finish that question first, and I tend to say, I'm sorry, what did you say? And I come from protocol. However, on my way out, I overheard somebody saying, hey, he's English. That's what we want. Languages. He speaks Arabic. You know, half Italian through his mother. Languages. Forget the school, never mind the English schools. He never went to a French school. You know, forget all that. Between themselves. Mm-hmm. And when they called the name, I can't tell you how I felt, because my name, Soussi with an S, came way all down the line to be called, about 30 of us. So my name, I waited. Those with A's and B's and C's and C's. I went in, so I was accepted. But I went to a small agency of Air France, very small. So I went to see the personnel manager to make my introduction, and he said, do you have any questions? I said, you got colonies all over. Can I be appointed overseas? He said, my dear man, you'll be on list number 2,000 and something, everybody ahead of you. Okay, that's it. So 6 months later, there was an announcement made. They wanted somebody for Brazzaville, in the French Congo. Mm-hmm. I applied. And then I was told, oh, yes, but there's somebody ahead of you. He had seniority, and he goes first. I said, fine. Then they called me again. Apparently, the man's wife didn't want to go to Africa. She had phlebitis, I don't know, something like phlebite, something serious. And they said, no, we don't want the responsibility to take you to, you're next. So I only stayed 6 months in Paris. I gave back all my ration cards to whoever wanted them, and I went to Brazzaville. So my career was in Africa, throughout. And being a bachelor, I accepted every postings. People had to go on vacation. We do 2-year tours, and 3 months vacation. I stepped in. So I did every possible station. I traveled extensively. My English was a tremendous asset in promotions and that kind of thing. But after 3 tours overseas, that's it for now. You have to take a break, because they were fighting paludism, mosquitoes at the time. So we had to take every morning the tablet, every morning. And even back on vacation, they supplied me with tablets later. But you have to stop for a while. So I stopped for a while, but I just could not live in Paris. I just could not live. My parents was still overseas, back in Egypt. So anyway, my brother was in Indochina. British Airways offered me a situation to go back to Africa. Well, this time it would be in British Africa, all the British Africa. So I covered all of that, and my job was also to train future Africans to take over from the British. So I spent another many years in Africa. That was it. I was lucky to be able to get away with my pension and money and came over to France. This time I left the airlines and I went to the air construction. And, you know, we were competing with Airbus. Airbus was competing with Boeing. My company was doing Concorde and all this. And again, my English served tremendously. I dealt with all the English-speaking countries.
Hang on one second. Okay, this is Mr. Robert Soussi, and we are continuing with his interview. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I want to go back for a few minutes of my time in Africa. And so I was always in contact with my two sisters. My brother was overseas. And just to find out how my parents were faring, how were they doing, you know. And my sister said, I have something to ask her, and I'm going to send you a letter. When the letter came, and she said, look, our parents are living with me, talking about herself. And they're living up there in a space that looked like a garage or something. Her husband not too open and not too effusive and that kind of thing. And there's my father and mother living in a single room and sharing all the other facilities. So it was very restrained. And so my sister was caught in between. So she suggested something. She said, you know, the government is giving help, but to certain people, and they're making apartments available at a very reasonable rate. She said, how about if you buy an apartment for yourself, and you can put the parents in, but it will be your apartment forever.
Okay.
Well, so to make it brief, I thought it was a good idea. Why not, you know, at least peace for my sister, but she was the only one absorbing my parents. My other sister is in Sardinia, and my brother elsewhere, and I'm in Africa. And I said, fine, but she said, everything will be done. She said there was a problem with the authorities. She said, she was told, why do you need an apartment? You know, and she said, well, my parents need them because they were expelled from Egypt, etc. So they said, okay, it will make it easy, but due their age, maybe we should move them somewhere else. Well, and she said, no, so anyway, she arranged that it could be in my name. And officially, people living there would be my father and mother. So that created, I got the papers, everything in order. I sent them money, and I didn't give it another thought, except apparently my mother and father, my mother in particular, were so happy. They had a one-room apartment, they had a living room, they had a bath, kitchen, and a balcony, and they were on their own. They were their own place to live. And I said, that's fine. So this what took care of my parents as far as I could do something for them. So anyway, when it comes that at the end of my term, I then had enough of Africa because I didn't have too much choice. They were Africanizing everything. the role for the contracts, the new contracts, to train Africans to take over from us, whether it was British, French, or Belgians. So, so there was not too much, but my money was safe in England. So I retired from Africa, unfortunately, which I loved so much, and came to France. And in France, I spent a little time with my father and mother, but I didn't occupy my sister, the kind of space that my parents occupied. So I started looking for a job over there, and I went around the travel agents and agencies like KLM and this and this and this. At one time, they opened doors for me as a visitor, but when it came that it was for a job, officially I was too smart. Being that I was in charge of countries back in Africa, spaces, countries, decision making, that I was being restricted. And I was very, very discouraged. Fine. A cousin of mine worked for a shipping company, a US shipping company. And he hinted that there were a couple of vacancies, and although you are airline and this is shipping, it's still travel, come and give it a shot. So I said, all right. Okay. So to make it brief, this is where I met my wife. She was working there, coming from the States, and she can explain later why she came over to learn her French, improving her French and that kind of thing. And she had a job there. So I got to meet her, and eventually also dated with her, dating together. And I introduced her to my parents, and whenever a sister was around, so my family absorbed her, took her in, no problem. It was a bit different with her parents, being in the States, and her daughter being alone over there in France, although she lived with a distant cousin somewhere, you know. Her father was of French origin. And so they got a bit suspicious. And initially they also thought that she's meeting someone older than she is or was, and the idea was that I wanted to take advantage of it to come to the States by, you know, and they said, so she was not really felt too welcome, but she stood firm. And she said, no, I'd rather, I know what I'm doing, that kind of thing, but being very, very nice with her parents and that kind of thing. So it came that they accepted, finally, and so we got married in Paris on the suburbs. And I took over the apartment that my parents were going to live in. So I bought another one, a brand new one, built to our own specification, right, which René liked also. So everything worked fine, and the day of our wedding, we received a telegram from my parents welcoming me and wishing us all the best, etc., etc. So I settled in, we settled in the apartment, and I must digress a little bit. It's because, well, not quite. So anyway, we were doing good. We were doing very, very good. And so I stayed with René in that the shipping company, US whatever it is. And but my feeling was get back to the airlines or the aircraft. Down the street from practically where we lived, there was like a big outfit that built planes. So I applied there. So it was altogether different from where I used to be in the airline as to going into the construction. But again, my English proficiency helped a lot. So I went and worked over there, and I made a very, very good career. And again, I worked with the NATO countries and that kind of thing. We lived in our apartment that we loved very much, but I was also a bit restricted in space. I was always living in the houses and not apartments. And so anyway, I started thinking about going to the States with the company that, and I got a lot of help from my company, which incidentally is as big as Boeing here in the States, and very big competitors with Boeing.
Okay.
Very big. I mean, we built the Boeing, they are our competitors. That famous airliner, anyway, I don't, it doesn't matter. I went, so we go to the States. But prior to getting to the States, I went on a job for the company I worked for. They had a problem with Canada in getting money for services rendered to the government. So it was between government and government. Mm-hmm. So my supervisor took me to the Canadian Embassy in Paris to see how we can solve this. He was under pressure from the head office, our head office, and they said, why can't we get the money? What's wrong? You know, I mean, it's government and government. It's not an individual who's hiding, you know. And he said, well, you know, it's technical. And he said, he looked at me, the Canadian, and he said, so, why don't you send Mr. Soussi over there? I mean, he looked at his English and all this, although in Canada I didn't speak English at all. It was all French Canadian, right. You know. So he said, why don't you send him over there? And you'll see, he's going to be welcome and he'll settle, but us over the telephone and telexes, mm-hmm. And so emails didn't exist and that kind of thing. So he said, so my supervisor said, get ready to go to Canada. So what I thought of, I went to the personnel department. I said, I'm going to Canada. She said, yes, we know, we'll get the ticket for you and everything. I said, well, can I make a stopover to America? I mean, we have to make a connection. And they said, yes. I said, well, I'd like to meet my in-laws. I'd never met them yet. I mean, it was about 2 years or something very small span of time, but it was always either telephone or letters and that kind of thing. But I thought it's time that we went. They said, no problem. Stay, you know, take vacation time if you want, then continue to Canada. So to make it short, I got to the States. I was met at the airport by her sisters, family, wonderful. It was great, a big thing at night, got all the rest of the family, aunts and uncles and all this, and I was adopted by the family. I was taken in at once. Renee was trembling back home, wondering and praying that everything goes smooth and so anyway, and with the Canadians, it was over at dinner time. At dinner time, it was interpreting a clause in the contract that should have been mentioned at the time that we requested the money. It was typical of bureaucracy. So I came back with flying colors, and so everything went well. So anyway, to make it also brief again, my father-in-law said, you know, if you come over, I'll do everything possible to help you, you know, to settle down. And in the meantime, we had our baby, our girl. So we got to the States, and I made a new career, starting from scratch again. The authorities wanted to know everything from the day I was born. Although I had military clearance, secret clearance, I had all the papers, but they said, yes, but all this came like when you were in Africa and all this, but here, sorry, start all over. So
What year was this?
Pardon me?
When was this?
The year?
Mm-hmm.
Could you help?
1967 you came here?
Yeah.
Okay.
See? So, so anyway, I found a job, you know, but I was restricted. I was restricted because I didn't have the clearance, but I got the clearance finally. I really got the clearance, and everything went well. We had our second child, and a boy this time, a girl and a boy, in the States. My daughter was born in France, a boy. She's crazy. She likes to say, I'm French, you know, but at the time. So, and then we traveled. My wife had a good time with me in the sense that I was invited at embassies back in France, cocktails and that kind of thing because of my job and that kind of thing. It was much less when we were in the States, but she was busy raising the children. I must say that during the past week that I was here, there was something I wanted to mention and air out. And that is, to this day, I bitterly regret that I didn't do more for my parents in the sense of an apartment. The apartment I bought, the second one that we did, was up to date. It was being built in a block of 6 apartments. So it was done to my taste and what we needed and that kind of thing and that kind of. And I expressed my resentment that I missed something there. And my 2 sisters helped me out by saying, nonsense. What you did for the parents made a big difference in their lives at the age that they were. They didn't have to worry about a house. They had an apartment that they were happy with and free of thinking, a sense of independence, although they lived strictly on us. My parents were expelled with nothing. We lost everything back in Egypt, everything back in Egypt. His savings, bank, everything. I mean, it was sequestered and that kind of thing. When they left on a ship, my mother's shoes, the soles were ripped off to see that nothing was hidden in there. My father's fob watch, he had this old-fashioned thing, the watch here and the chain here ripped over, and the cufflinks ripped off. I mean, really bad, bad, bad. But my sister, I'm telling my wife this over and over again when she says, what's the matter? I said, I wish I could have done better. I wish I could have done better. And I can't get away with it, but I like to air it because I still believe, speaking for myself, I still believe that everything I've accomplished, I owe it to my parents. And they're thinking, for the 4 of us, for my brother and all, but I'm speaking for myself, that I was in a position when my sister asked, I could have said, well, why don't you look for something better? Or why don't you look? All I heard, government is building and helping, grab it, which I did. And that's it. That's it. This, in a nutshell, is my life in America.
Where were you living at the time? What city did you settle in? Here?
Which city?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, initially, it was Long Island. That's where my parents, in-law,
In-laws, right.
lived. And Grumman aircraft was there, and so it was in Long Island that we bought our first house with our daughter and our son. Our son, no, our daughter came with us. The baby, I remember going on the ship in the cot and all this. And the son was born in Long Island, so I had a daughter born in France, and a son born New York State,
Okay.
Long Island. And from there, I will say one thing. My sister-in-law, I believe, has moved about, when she got married, has lived in about, if I'm not mistaken, about 18 houses so far, if not going into the 20s. We lived in a total of 3 houses, because from Long Island, the next job and the next house was in Oklahoma.
Big
Yes,
difference.
Exactly that.
Big difference. Right?
Big difference,
Oh, my
very
goodness.
big difference.
Who did you work for in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City.
No, what company?
Oh,
No l'aviation.
who was it?
No l'aviation.
Non aviation, still the aircraft manufacturer. And it helped a lot because the headquarters of FAA is in Oklahoma,
Oh, okay.
Oklahoma State.
Right.
The agreement, I've got to explain this. The agreement is France, government level, France and England, and probably France and the US, and probably England, I'm sure, have a bilateral agreement. They certify our aircraft, French government certified theirs. So in other words, if they buy one of our planes, anybody buys one of our planes in the States, they know that they don't have to worry, is it okay? Because it's got the US stamp of approval, and vice versa. And it was vice versa to the advantage of the French, because the majority of the planes in the States at the time, we had McDonnell Douglas and Boeings and other ones smaller. It worked beautifully. There's never been a problem. The cooperation is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure it's the same with Britain. What I was talking about, our aircraft, the first one, top, the Concorde, the supersonic.
Right.
And since then, the double-decker, the Boeing, and
Right.
the Airbus. Everybody's familiar with the Airbus. And that's why when people ask me, where did you retire from? I would say from a competitor of, the biggest competitor of Boeing, and the equivalent of Boeing. I mean, we are on par. We compete, you know. So that is.
So how long were you in Oklahoma for?
I think 8.
Oh,
8 years?
8 years. And with a lot of travel. A lot of travel. In fact, my mother came to see us over there, in addition to New York. But my mother became a widow since. And came to Oklahoma, of all places. My sister came to visit with us. We bought a timeshare somewhere in, you probably know,
Arkansas.
Arkansas. So when we drove over to Arkansas to show my sister our timeshare, and we used to say we went to that state, we went through that state, about 2 states, at least 2 states to get to Oklahoma. She loved it. I was trying to explain back home that America is not a country, it's a continent, practically. I mean, with all the states, I mean, it's huge. What they don't understand, which is very hard to explain, is that, for instance, a doctor who lives in Oklahoma and goes back to New York, not necessarily exactly, and sometimes they have to change a license to
Right.
driver's license.
Yeah.
And they say it's not the same, yes, it's the same country, but every state is autonomous when it comes to their own rules and that kind of. So sometimes we give up trying to explain over there. It's too difficult. It's too difficult. And the politics in particular,
That's hard to explain.
it is. I mean, they don't. I gave up trying to explain. I gave up. They cannot understand that, like President Carter, at the time when he was president, or before, he used to go all over Africa to teach them independence, to teach them this and this and this. And then when we come back here, you find out that the votes don't count as much as that other thing that for the election, that it is the
Electoral
two-
college. Electoral college?
the electoral. I've asked some friends to explain it to me. I still don't understand it, and I've been here a long time. And that is the truth. I don't understand that. It's according to the state and the number of people who live there and that kind of thing. So, like in the last election, the candidate who lost had more votes.
I know. Okay, but I want to move back to your life. I don't want to hear about politics.
No.
It's
No,
too
but I need
confusing.
to try to explain
Yeah.
even the point of
Right. So tell me, when did you move away from Oklahoma then? You were there 8
Oklahoma
years,
Came up.
and you got a job here?
Came up to Dallas, and we stayed here almost 40 years now.
No, not quite, no, 81,
81.
1981.
81? 81. We had the two children. One went to college, and the other one also college.
Where did they end up? Where did they go to college?
Leslie Ann,
TCU?
TCU, and
TCU,
yes,
Texas
two
Tech.
different colleges.
In Texas.
The two didn't agree where to go. TCU for
Uh-huh.
one, and
Texas.
Stephen,
Texas Tech.
Lubbock.
Texas Tech.
Right, okay.
Oh, you heard? Oh, she said that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, Texas Tech.
Okay.
TCU. Uh, Leslie Ann had 1 year more of college than Steve. We lost our daughter. She was killed over there. Yeah, she was killed in a car accident going over in the morning to have her papers typed down the street by a lady who makes a living typing papers for the students. And it was an all-day affair. The surgeons were professionals from Vietnam, Indochina, and they came to us in the evening to say she cannot absorb more. During her being looked after, the students came and stood outside or in the hall, and they overheard that the hospital was running short of blood. One of the students, or several of them, ran back to the college, made an appeal, and said, Leslie Ann needs blood. And before we knew it, pints and pints and pints came over. And that's when the doctors said, and I consulted with my wife and son of what to do. And my son, I said, I want my son here. And they bumped a flight attendant who was as a passenger on the plane from Lubbock so that he could come and join us. But when the doctor said, we can do something, but she's going to be in a
Vegetative state.
state. And my wife looked at me, she said she would never forgive you. Our daughter She looked at me, she said, she will never forgive you. And I said, I won't do it. I won't do it. So that was, I mean, and that is something that I'm going to carry the rest of my life. We are going to carry the rest of our lives. But, you know, I made 2 or 3 decisions like this in my lifetime, with my father too. And my mother said the same thing. The doctor, the family doctor said, we can go into the brain and do something, but however, the word however scared my mother and me. And but for Leslie Ann, no, I cannot imagine my daughter being in that state. So this is my life. I mean, I became here, I went into civic activities.
What kind of organizations were you involved in?
The most important, I became the chairman of it, the president of this association for.
Called Compassionate Friends.
Did you catch it?
Mhm.
Remind me again.
Compassionate Friends, right?
And I stayed with them
Right.
many years, many years. I started off and then took over duties. And I was a great help to them, and they were a great help to me. Were a great help to me, a great help to me. And I did that. My wife and I were not the same. We grieve differently. We have different ways, with different times. We don't have to wait at a certain date to look at the calendar. We know the dates in particular. But during the year, that doesn't stop us from grieving.
Right.
You know, or thinking, if this, if that, or do you remember this, or do you remember that? No, I mean, and even in the group, some couples will not come together because the husband would be more angry than the wife, in the sense, it should not have happened, and why were you absent when it happened, or that kind of, and vice versa. People grieve differently. Each one individually, you know, we do our own thing. With that, when I stopped doing that, I went to down the street, not walking this, but with the car, really down the street. Retirement homes of old people's homes, and I took over one individual to go twice a week, feed him, keep him company, and do that. But he was also in another world. I became very friendly with his 2 daughters, and they were grateful. I mean, very grateful to me for doing what I did. And I did it for people, also one in particular that he was alert and everything, but he had lost. So I took him to an ice cream store. His children gave me a waiver to take him out of the establishment. And they knew me, I was recommended and that kind of thing. So he was all dressed up. He came to our house, and you should have seen him, what a gentleman he was to meet my wife and that kind of thing. But he, unfortunately, his parents, his father and mother, could not cope with him. So I did that too, until it came to a time that I can't do it. And then I've got my own problems, and that is eyes, and also not being able. I have a balance problem. So that's a handicap. That is a handicap. The balance, I can take care of it. I haven't fallen yet, but I bumped into things and I had bruises. You can tell the feet, but it's the eyes. The eyes is my biggest concern, and I take care of this very, very closely. And so health-wise, you know, this is what I had to face, take care of. And 6 months ahead of time, I volunteered to give up driving.
You volunteered?
Telephone
You said, yeah,
because
that's my phone. Ignore that. Sorry. Have you been involved in any other organizations, either civic or religious or anything else?
no, back in Oklahoma, I was the president of the Alliance Française. Here I didn't care for it, I didn't like it. I didn't like it because when they gave me a telephone number to call, and unfortunately, it wasn't handled properly. And I don't blame the person who answered the phone. It was a lady in the suburbs somewhere. And she said to me, yes, we heard of your interest and your background. And so at what level do you wish to join? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, we got A that gives you certain privileges, and B. No, none of this nonsense. I was also for the French in Lagos. I was the air expert. He said, I appoint you, the ambassador said, I appoint you for air relations, air matters. I mean, that kind of thing. Because it was more restrictive, the community was much smaller, and that kind of thing. So here, organization,
Anshe Emmett.
Anshe Emmett, Anshe Torah now, it
Yeah.
used to be Anshe Emmett. In fact, I was the vice president of Anshe Emmett. I was the gabbai, ritual committee in charge of the ritual, because it was, again, much smaller.
Right.
Then there was the merger with Anshe Torah, Anshe Torah. I cannot attend services the way I do every Saturday. I cannot do it anymore. I have stopped doing it for the past year. Cannot do it anymore. The high holidays would be extremely difficult for me because of all the additional things that they've added to a service because of the number of people that they want to honor, stand up and stand up and sit down because it's repetitive. On a Saturday without a bar or bat mitzvah, I can't say, I know the number of times I can get up and I can measure myself. In a high holiday, they repeat things, as you probably know, to give people a chance to go up to the bima, to the council. No, I have to restrict myself because I know my limitations. I know my limitations, and I don't ride anymore. So I have to rely on Renee to come and pick me up. No. Some people have said, I'll pick you up and Renee can take you back home and all that kind of thing. Then that means I have to have a phone with me, Renee come and pick me up, I can't take it anymore. I can't. The high holidays I want to go. If only to hear the shofar or whatever it is, without straining myself and being depending on other people. I've done my share. I've done my share.
Before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this? Tell us about?
That I could add.
Anything
Really,
else?
I think I've opened up as much as I could. I mentioned about my parents, everything that we are grateful to.
Yes.
And
Would you consider them your role models?
who?
Your parents?
Yes. And without any preference, whatever, each one has its qualities. Each one. So we learn from both of them.
Right.
From both. I can't say one was better than the other. No way. My father was in charge and like I think at home, my mother.
Of course.
At home. My mother at home.
Yeah.
In the evening, be careful the homework when we came back from school. I want to say something. My mother, we had servants. unfortunately, that is common. That is common. So we had, I wish I could have both the pictures. We had a head servant, we had the other servant, and one woman, she must have, at the time, she must have been in her 80s or something, doing nothing but laundry every day, every single day. We were a family of 4, my mother, including 2 sisters, but there was enough to keep her busy all the time, all the time. My son, my Ahmed, the head who stayed with us for 30 years until I left, you know, and then when I went back, he was still there. And he called me in Arabic, I was his cane. He was relying on me for his retirement, for his old age. He was relying on me. But anyway, my mother could be with friends or could be absent when we came back from school. Ahmed knew what to give us, what we call the goûter, that means a snack. Then he would sit us at the kitchen table, which was all marble, and do your homework. He couldn't read, write, nothing. Absolutely. He sat down there, and he said, now remember, if you fool around with me, I'll tell your father. Oh, yeah. Then when he thought we did okay, but not so much for my 2 sisters. It was for my brother and myself, because we wanted to go out and play in the street and with the other boys and kick the ball and that kind of thing. You know. But he was like a confidant with my mother. You should see them. He put on glasses on, they sit across from one another and do the pasta, all the macaroni. We never bought any from outside. Everything was homemade. You made the roskets, you made the sambousek, you made this, you made that, and the cakes, the brioche, and everything was done at home, taken down to the baker, down the street. Down the street, the baker was there. And once a month, the baker would come and give a scrap of paper to my mother to say, Madame Marie, or in Arabic, Sit Marie, this is the bill. Okay. We would go down and buy the bread and bring it back with no cash. He would write it down. Everything was done like this, by word, by trust. Getting back to the servant, back in Egypt, all the houses are all flat. Like in Algeria, like all over the Middle East. And my mother built 2 or maybe 3 rooms at a time, I don't remember. She had Ahmed and his wife and the 2 kids. I mean, that's where they lived up there. When he finished, she sent the 2 kids at school, my mother. She paid for that. She dressed them, gave them the clothes for them, fed them, plus his wife, maybe 2 wives, I don't know if he had 2, I don't remember. One for sure. All my mother was a saint in their eyes of the Muslim, and I have to mention them. I really have to.
Right.
And that woman, she also spent her life up there, because that's where you have the laundry. That's where you dry them in the sun. My mother took care of them.
Sounds like they had a good life. But we're going to end it here, and I thank you very much for your wonderful story and your stories, and wish you long and healthy life. Thank you, sir.